What is going on, everybody, and welcome to CTW Live. I'm your host, Seamus Zarlingo. Alongside of me tonight, Griffin Aldridge. And tonight, folks, the 2025 NBA Draft officially commences. And of course, the Boston Celtics, they are making some news. They are making some headlines right now ahead of the NBA Draft. The Boston Celtics, from multiple perspectives here, making great headlines. But Griffin, how are you here today on this draft day?
Seamus, I'm gonna say I'm scared to even be live right now. I'm scared to even record because the last three, obviously, we had the Porzingis one, so that doesn't count. But the last three, like lives that we've done or recordings that have nothing to do. Sorry, last two, the big two. We had the recording, obviously breaking down the Thunder and everything like that. Drew Holiday gets traded. Then yesterday, we're doing a recording for the NBA draft, and boom, Porzingis gets traded. So I'm not gonna lie, I'm kind of scared to be live right now. Like it's really scaring me because it's not even any random trades. No, it's the Celtics. Like they're like, all right, let's. But I'm very scared. I'm hurt. I'm not gonna lie. I've been going through it today. It doesn't help that my boss is a New York Knicks fan, so I'm just hearing it.
Wow.
I'm hearing him saying,
Wow.
"Oh, we ended the Celtics franchise." Da, da,
Just
da.
wait until they trade Mikal Bridges, all right? Just wait
I
until that moment,
yeah,
right? Wait until
I'll
they're in
have
on the Giannis sweepstakes and Carl Anthony Towns is out the door and Jalen Brunson is out the door. Just wait for that moment.
I'll have
Although
my
they'd be
last
getting
laugh.
Giannis, I
I'll
will
have
say.
my last laugh for sure. But I will say, it's like it's been a rough day. Like Porzingis leaving, he was the heart of Boston, and it's like when you gave up Marcus Smart for him, it's like, all right, well, we're getting back a player that's going to affect the game well, and he instantly took over the shoes of Marcus Smart. Now you gave up him for Georges Niang, who I don't think will take over the shoes of Porzingis. I don't see him being a Marcus Smart type player. I don't see him being a Porzingis type player. So it kind of sucks. You're getting back something great, so it softened the blow with Marcus Smart, but it wasn't great at the same time. However, you're like getting nothing. But you understand why. Like you understand why because we're now under the second apron, and that's very important. And it could help us make some moves, obviously, but it hurts. It's like, I was talking about it at work today. It's the fact of sports really play a mental toll on people. And like it really it's more than just the game. It affects you in different ways for sure. But that's how I'm feeling. What about you though, Seamus? How are you feeling after these crazy moves that the Celtics have made and ultimately seeing the championship team just blow up right in front of our very eyes?
Yesterday was the first day without Drew Holiday. Today is the first day without Kristaps Porzingis. And here we see Kristaps Porzingis sending a tweet out to Celtics Nation. Boston will always be special in my heart, Kristaps Porzingis says in this tweet. Huge thank you to the organization, coaches, staff, my teammates, and the fans. Class organization, forever grateful. And you see a couple of graphics. Jason Tatum sending his farewells on IG, on his IG story here to Drew Holiday and Kristaps Porzingis. A little photo of Kristaps Porzingis with a trophy there in the middle, and then the photo all the way on the left, a little faded there. That's the photo Kristaps Porzingis posted on his Twitter today. A little sad. I don't think it's fully sunk in yet. I don't think we've really let it marinate with us yet that Kristaps Porzingis and Drew Holiday are really out the door. And I think one reason that is because both guys are immortalized in Celtics lore. I think we'll always remember them as Celtics greats. They'll be brought up in Celtic history so many different times when it comes to the 2024 title and the historical measures in which that team was able to achieve that season. We're going to be talking about Porzingis and Holiday for a long, long time into the
Oh,
future, which makes that's a it looks if you look at it from the Smart and Porzingis and Holiday perspective. Smart was here for 9 years, but he didn't win a ring. Yet Porzingis and Holiday, they're only here for 2 years. They won a ring, and as sad as it is to say, they could be remembered a little more highly in history than, say, a guy like Marcus Smart, even though he was here for nearly a decade, or even though he was in Boston for nearly a decade.
Definitely.
And
Definitely.
I don't want to go into the whole conversation of who's the more beloved Celtic in history, but I look at it a little bit like, well, if you're here, you're at a certain location for 10 years and you don't win a ring. There's just something different about winning a championship, going through the gauntlet, getting to that peak, that precipice of immortalization within a city, within the NBA community as a whole. That's just different than just simple longevity, right? Longevity definitely puts status on different guys, but ultimately that ring. I mean, we look at Kawhi in Toronto, right? Kawhi in Toronto was there for 1 year. Yet I'm sure the Raptors fan base, they still love Kawhi Leonard, even though he left the summer afterwards. And he's always going to be remembered in Raptors history for that one season. I mean, that season in its entirety is still remembered to this day. A lot of people still bring up the 2018-19 Raptors. Could have been the Celtics that year they brought up, but it wound up being the Raptors. However, tonight, the NBA changes fates, fortunes all over the place, right? The fates and the fortunes of the NBA certainly changed tonight, and one of those teams in which their fate could turn one way or another tonight, certainly the Boston Celtics, because some headlines coming out on the Boston Celtics. We covered this last night, but might as well bring it up again to remind everybody the Celtics are aggressively trying to land a lottery pick for tomorrow's draft, per Steve B. Hoop. And of course, that's tonight's draft as we are here sitting today on draft day, just a couple of hours away from the NBA draft. We will be live throughout the NBA draft, and we're basically doing a watch along. So everybody come join that when the NBA draft starts. We'll be starting around the same time, and we're going to cover it just like ESPN, just like any other network. We're going to cover it here on Celtics Talk Weekly from our perspective, and we're going to be live for the entirety of the draft, and that will be later tonight, not too far away, actually. So tonight's draft here on this tweet. However,
Can I
from
say?
NBA Central, go ahead, Griffin.
I'll save it. I'll save it. Go along. Go along.
All right. Well, NBA Central here. Several teams in the top 10 of the draft have been making trade offers for Jaylen Brown and Derek White, per Brian Windhorst. He said this on ESPN earlier today. So, Windy giving out a little tidbit. We all know Brian Windhorst, very plugged in with his league sources, knows what's going on around the league, the rumblings, everything. So anytime Brian Windhorst, he gives out that little tidbit on TV, got to take it seriously. And when we've heard this from Shams Charania in the past couple of weeks, however, this right here, several teams in the top 10, several teams, okay, several teams, multiple teams in the top 10 have been making trade offers for Jaylen Brown and Derek White. We'll get into that in a little bit, and we'll actually bring up two teams here who seem to be in the mix for Jaylen Brown and Derek White here in a minute. However, the Celtics, this also coming out. We mentioned this a little bit during the KP and Drew breaking trade lives. The Celtics, this comes from Legion Hoops. The Celtics could include newly acquired Anthony Simons in trade talks ahead of tonight's draft, per ESPN. We went over a lot. We went over a lot of scenarios of the Celtics potentially moving Simons elsewhere, and a lot of salary the Celtics have still on their roster now under the second apron. The Celtics can aggregate salaries, can go out and get themselves names elsewhere. Anthony Simons, definitely a player right now the Celtics could be looking to reroute, if not play next season. I mean, one or the other. That seems to be the case for the Celtics right now. However, getting into the top 10 of the NBA draft here, and speculating on some of the teams developing from Legion Hoops. The Utah Jazz have made an aggressive push to try and acquire Jaylen Brown from the Celtics. That's per Brett Siegel, NBA. And the obvious connection between Jaylen Brown and the Utah Jazz and the Celtics and the Utah Jazz, that is, Danny Ainge and Austin Ainge out in Utah running the basketball operations department out there. Danny Ainge, Austin Ainge, that brain trust ultimately drafted Jaylen Brown back in 2016. We all know how high they are on Jaylen Brown. And not only did they draft Jaylen Brown, they held on to Jaylen Brown throughout the years, stayed pat with Jaylen Brown, never knee-jerked a move for Jaylen Brown. And we see Jaylen Brown eventually wins Finals MVP, Eastern Conference Finals MVP, and a ring with the Celtics later on in time. So Danny Ainge, Austin Ainge, out there in Utah, both believed in Jaylen Brown over the years in Boston. Now trying to acquire him with the Utah Jazz. A very interesting wrinkle for draft night tonight. And here we see another report from Legion Hoops. Report: the Raptors have offered a package to the Celtics that includes the number 9 pick for Derek White. And if I had to speculate on this one, it would probably be RJ Barrett and that number 9 pick. However, that's all we know right now is that this is a rumor. The Raptors have offered a package to the Celtics that includes the number 9 pick for Derek White. So a lot of rumors here to unpack and get to, Griffin. Some of those are some bombshells, but at the end of the day, they're only rumors, right? They're
Yeah.
only rumors. You can't do too much with them. It's certainly something to look at. We'll dissect every single one of them. However, looking at the first rumor there, the Celtics aggressively trying to move up, Griffin. We've heard this now for the past 24 hours or so. It came out when we were on live yesterday, and as you said at the beginning of the live, we're so yeah, everybody, you gotta be mindful right now of the potential news in which could come out with us on live. I mean, we've been on a hot streak as of late. However, that report came out last night. The rumor came out. The Celtics were aggressively trying to move into the lottery. The Celtics have some assets to do so right now, as we see acquiring Simons and Niang, holding their own first round pick for the next couple of years. That's big for the Celtics. They can trade their first round pick. But from your perspective, Griffin, what are your thoughts on the Celtics potentially moving up, and where do you see them potentially moving up in the draft?
Well, I don't think they'll end up moving up. Um, I'm scared to say that because I the only way I think we move up is if we package Sam Hauser in our 28th pick. And I wouldn't be opposed to that. However, if it's involving giving up Derek White or Jalen Brown, I'm gonna say let's stay where we're at in the NBA draft. I'm not mad about the 28th pick, and I think we could still do some damage with that. Baylor Shireman
Yep,
being
I was
our
gonna say,
pick
look at Baylor
last year.
Shireman,
Yeah.
number
So
30.
so like the Boston Celtics have done a very good job in, and you look back at Desmond Bain too, them drafting them, ended up trading him on draft night, but you could still get some good assets in the 28th realm. So I'm still confident in that pick. I think it's a very good draft. So yes, there's better talent higher up, but I really think with the 28th pick, you could get one of those secret gems. Like you never know. So if I'm the Celtics, I'm staying where we're at. Obviously, they've been aggressive to move up in the draft, and I'm gonna quote a take that Brad Stevens said during his press conference. There's gonna be fireworks on draft night. He's not sure if it'll be the Celtics, but there's gonna be fireworks. So expect trades tonight, just from an NBA perspective too.
We have to go back to that
Oh
Brad
my gosh,
Stevens press conference.
Seamus, I'm not gonna lie. When you said you just got like excited for a second, I was like, oh my gosh,
No, I'm okay. We are. I don't know if the population can tell right now, the public. We are on edge right now. We're on edge because
I'm scared.
I just made a movement that scared you, but at the same time, when you went, oh, I went, wait a minute, does he know something? Wait, I immediately tapped my screen over here and went, wait, is there a notification? Is there something going on?
Oh,
I don't know. We're on complete. I mean, we're on edge with what's going on right now,
especially
and but
recording, and like at the time that we're recording too, it's 6:19 right now. Like for you, 5:19. Like we're less than 2 hours away from the NBA draft.
right.
Like this is
But
where
I will say it's like the
trades
trade
happen.
deadline where they wait right up until sometimes it's right up until the pick to actually make the trade, right? Say the Celtics move
Yeah.
up into the lottery and say they move up to I mean we'll go in on where they could potentially move up to, but say theoretically, they move up to the Jazz spot or the Raptors spot. It could be right before the pick, depending on
Stop,
who falls to that
stop
pick.
that, stop that. Don't
Well,
even.
I'm just saying we're an
Yeah,
hour and
we,
2 hours
but
away. I'm
we,
saying it's usually like the trade deadline. The trade deadline, it's always right up until the deadline, right? It's like a couple hours before the trade deadline. The last hour, right? The last hour of the trade deadline is usually crazy. That's usually what happens. I
yeah,
mean, we were on live earlier this year, and it was craziness at the deadline. I mean, multiple years where we've been live for that. But the draft, it's going to be the same thing because in the draft too, you wait until the last moment until you know what kind of offer you're actually securing. However, I was going to say, you mentioned the fireworks, right? And Brad Stevens said, "Oh, there'll be fireworks on draft night, but probably not with us, right? Not with the Celtics."
Yeah.
Funny to go back and look at that press conference. Funny to go back and look at the analysis we put forth on that press conference. Now looking back at it, going, the Celtics, they might not do much on draft night. And then all of a sudden, we're aggressively looking to move up, and Jaylen Brown could be on his way to Utah, and Derek White could be on his way to Toronto, given the circumstances of what could happen right now. It's I reiterate it, the press conferences at the end of the year, and the GMs, the owners, I mean, they're saving face. They're saving face for the real moves in which they're going to consider. I mean, to the public, they're not going to tell the public what kind of moves they're not going to tell the public, oh yeah, we're trying to move off of Jaylen Brown. Oh, we're trying to do this. We're trying to do it. They're always going to save face in that regard. However, I will say, right now, I want to say this in regard to Jaylen Brown and those rumors, okay? Because we talked in the past about Jaylen Brown and trading him or not. We've gone on to long discussions onto that, right? However, here's what I'm a little irked with right now when it comes to Celtics Nation, right? And their viewpoint of Jaylen Brown and the Celtics, where they stand in the draft. People keep saying it'd be a bad move to trade Jaylen Brown. Stop saying that. Stop saying that, because you don't know what the package is. All right, folks? Stop saying that. Everybody keeps saying, oh, do not move Jaylen Brown. That would be a You don't know what the package.
You don't know what the package is?
Imagine Utah gives us number 5, gives us. I mean, you look at their roster, and we went over. What's funny, we went over the Jazz actually in the live a couple nights ago. It might have been before the Giroux trade, or it might have been before that. But the Utah Jazz's roster, I mean, you could extract a lot of picks from them, a couple of young players as well, and the package could be a massive deal for Jaylen Brown. And that's my issue with people saying, "Oh, don't trade Jaylen Brown. Don't even consider it." You have to consider it if the package is a Godfather offer, and that's what we're looking at for a player like Brown and White, because the Celtics don't have to trade Jaylen Brown or Derek White. However, if the offers are just lucrative for their value, that's when you have to consider it if you're the Celtics.
Entertain the thought, but however,
right, but that's where I'm annoyed with the entire fan base going, you can't even enter, you do not even want to do that. And I'm going, you don't even know what the package is.
No, you have to definitely check the package, but there are very few packages I would accept for Jaylen Brown. However,
right, and that's the standard for the Celtics as well.
Yeah,
that's the standard. But if the package is there, if it's lucrative, again,
it's just the fact that
you have to consider it at the very least.
You have to entertain the thought for sure. But if it's a trade like, Porzingis, where they want to shed, but you could also get future picks. I look at the Celtics like this. Yes, Tatum's injured, but we don't need to rebuild. I look at this year for a bridge year, like this year should be a bridge year for the Boston Celtics. I don't think you rebuild. The Celtics are not in a situation where they have to rebuild. I mean, they were in second place for the East last year, and they were still a good team. So the Celtics don't need to rebuild. They need to retool, as we've been saying. They need to retool, and they need to have a bridge year. And from the bridge year, Tatum comes back, and you can compete once again. Maybe it'll take 1 to 2 years after Tatum comes back, but you want to set it up so you can compete when Tatum comes back. You don't want to rebuild this team, because there's no reason to rebuild this team, because I feel like if you go into a rebuild, Tatum's gone. If you go into a rebuild, you might lose Tatum, just looking at that side of things. However, if you retool and you construct pieces around the Celtics and build up the core with Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum and Derek White and Peyton Pritchard, I think we could say safe to say those guys, then you could retool this Boston Celtics and make them into a competitive team once Jason Tatum comes back. So to add on to your point, Seamus, I will say this. I don't think there are a lot of offers that I would accept for Jaylen Brown. However, you need to entertain the offers, because there could be one out there that just blows you away, and you're like, how could you pass on this? So you can't make him untouchable. However, you can't just trade him for nothing too, and it needs to be a good deal. I don't think that will happen. I don't think, knock on wood,
There you
I
go.
don't think
There we go.
I really don't think Jaylen Brown gets traded. I hope Jaylen Brown doesn't get traded. I have to say, because I
And
can't say I think, but I will tell you this. I will tell you this. These next, geez, till 10 o'clock at night, it's some scary time for the Celtics.
well, yeah, I was about to mention this is the window, right? Because you could trade Jaylen Brown later on in time if you're the Celtics this offseason, if that were actually on the table. But on draft night in the next few hours, that's when the unknown is better than the known, right? If you're getting a draft pick in which you're selecting yourself, that's different than if you're getting a player already selected. That's why it's important in the next couple of hours. If you're going to pull the trigger on anything, that's why you have to do it before the draft or before the pick comes to be. Because if you're picking yourself, that's different than going out and getting a player who's already picked. However, I do want to address this comment down here. Let's show it up here on stage. Do you do you think D White will get traded to the Raptors or the Lakers?
No,
Well, I
no,
can't say I think that will happen. All right, that's speculation. Say I think this will happen, but I do want to break down the possibility of what the Raptors could give up in a trade for Derek White. All right, because I think it's important to mine all of the different scenarios in which are out there, and just pulling up real quick all of their picks because that is also important to mention within all of this is what kind of picks the Raptors actually have out there. Because in a Derek White deal, right? What's going to happen is specifically with the Raptors, right? If there were to be a Derek White deal between the Raptors and the Celtics, first off, the number 9 pick has to be involved. The Raptors going ahead into the future, they have number 39 in this year's draft. That could be on the move to the Celtics in a potential deal. But looking ahead, the Raptors have their own first in 2026, 2027, 2028, 2029, 2030, 2031. So the Raptors have all of their future picks, which is great for the Toronto Raptors. However, that's also potentially great in a Derek White sweepstakes scenario. Maybe Derek White is sold on the market. The Celtics could extract quite a few picks out of the Toronto Raptors, given the fact that Toronto Raptors have all of their own picks moving forward. However, getting into the player aspect of the Toronto Raptors, because the Toronto Raptors, they have all their own picks moving forward. You extract a lot of those. I will say the Raptors don't have a ton of traded picks, from other teams. For example, the Timberwolves, they're picking 17th tonight. That pick is from Detroit, but it's from New York via the Karl Anthony Towns trade. So the Raptors don't have anything like that necessarily within their pick arsenal, or not a ton of those picks. They don't have any valuable future first round picks from other teams. They have 2 second round picks. It's via Portland tonight. That's the 39th overall pick. And then via Los Angeles, the Lakers next year. Otherwise, it's all the Raptors' own picks from here on out. There are no traded picks with the Toronto Raptors. So if the Celtics were to get picks back from the Raptors in a Derek White trade, it would be all the Raptors picks. That's the whole point there. However, looking at this from a player's perspective, right? You'd have to think the Raptors want to protect 2 players, and that would be Scotty Barnes and Brandon Ingram. Scotty Barnes and Brandon Ingram, because Scotty Barnes, he's 23 years old. They just signed him to an extension. He's making $51 million in 29-30. He's certainly a young guy they want to build around. I'm a little skeptical on the Scotty Barnes front of what kind of player he's going to turn into in the long run. And if this rebuild is just, I kind of wonder if Scotty Barnes is a little elevated version, a little higher of a caliber player than a Rui Hachimura. Like you wouldn't necessarily build around Rui Hachimura. Good player to have, don't get me wrong, but you're not necessarily building around him. That's kind of how I see Scotty Barnes. I see him as a better player, but I'm not certain he's going to. I don't know what Toronto. They feel as if they're going to build around Scotty Barnes, but I'm just not so certain he's going to turn out in the long run. That's another conversation for another day. But the other player, Brandon Ingram, in this ordeal, Brandon Ingram just signed an extension with the Raptors upon signing or upon getting traded to Toronto at the deadline from New Orleans, just signed an extension with the Raptors. Hasn't even played a game in Toronto yet. Was traded, dealing with an ankle injury the second half of the season, and signed an extension with the Raptors. And that extension inks him for $38 million next season, or rather, this next season coming in 25 26. 26 27, he's making $40 million and then 41.9 in 27 28, and that will be a player option. So Brandon Ingram getting that extension from the Raptors, I would think Brandon Ingram and Scotty Barnes are the safe names there. However, everyone else is on the table for the Raptors in my mind, including Jakob Poeltl. I understand Jakob Poeltl. They didn't want to include him. They didn't want to include Jakob Poeltl for Kevin Durant, but Kevin Durant, that situation is a little bit different than if you were to trade Jakob Poeltl for, say, a guy like Derek White in one of those deals. I think Jakob Poeltl would certainly be on the table, $19.5 million. I understand Toronto wants to hold on to him because he's one of their only reliable big guys. Really looking at their entire roster, he's their only big guy. The rest of their bigs aren't necessarily true bigs and guys who want consistently playing that position for you within a rotation. But you have Emmanuel Quickly, R.J. Barrett, Jakob Poeltl. Those are your big contracts, right? Scotty Barnes, Brandon Ingram. Scotty Barnes making $38.7 million next season. Brandon Ingram at $38.1 million. Those are the two biggest contracts on the Raptors roster, and then you have Quickly, Barrett, and Poeltl. I would think within a Derek White deal, you're probably looking at either Emmanuel Quickly or R.J. Barrett, in which the Raptors want to trade for Derek White, and of course potentially it would be Emmanuel Quickly, that ninth pick, and more assets attached for Derek White or RJ Barrett. I think either one of those. I think either one of those players are clearly the headliner here in this trade. If it were to happen, of course, a trade between the Raptors and the Celtics for Derek White, I believe it would be either Quickly or RJ Barrett. Barnes and Ingram, I see the Raptors protecting in that type of deal. I don't think they go that far for Derek White unless we really wanted to get frisky and maybe they give up on Scotty Barnes as a long-term solution for themselves. And it's possible, Scotty Barnes, a young guy, the Raptors, they look to get a little bit older. That's possible because you look at the rest of the roster. Scotty Barnes is a little bit younger. Emmanuel Quickly is 26, Brandon Ingram 27, RJ Barrett 25, going on 26, Jakob Poeltl 29. You never know, the Raptors could try to get a little bit more competitive next season with their current age group. But Quickly, Barrett, Poeltl, that would be one of those three, right? Would be the headliner in a Derek White trade. Or it could be multiple names with Poeltl attached, such as Abaji, Grady Dick. Even going down the roster, you get to guys like Jacoby Walter, AJ Lawson, Colin Castleton, Jonathan Mogbo, Jamal Shed, and Jamison Battle. I mean, none of those guys really have much trade value. Grady Dick and Abaji, I would say they have the most trade value out of anyone else on the roster, right? You have Quickly, Barrett, Poeltl at the top. As your headliners outside of the players in which the Raptors will protect. But then the rest of the roster, you have Agbaji and Grady Dick. Those are two young guys. I would say the Raptors, especially Grady Dick. Now the Raptors would want to hold on to. Agbaji probably not so much. I mean, he's 25 and he's been with two different franchises already, including the Utah Jazz. But for a potential Derek White deal, the thing is with this, I would say the Celtics, they don't get better. This is another deal. Like if you're looking at the Raptors as a potential trade partner, I don't think the Celtics get better by acquiring a player on the Raptors for Derek White straight up.
No.
You know what I mean? Like this deal, if there were to be a Derek White deal on the table, I believe it would have to be for a boatload of picks and Emmanuel Quickly or RJ Barrett, whoever the Celtics liked more out of those two players, really. One of those two players. And most like, I mean, if you look at their contracts, Emmanuel Quickly is $32.5 million. RJ Barrett is 27.7, Jakob Poeltl 19.5. I'm a Poeltl guy. The Celtics 100% need a big right now. If you look at their big man core, right now it's Neemias Queta and Xavier Tillman. Al Horford, free agent. Luke Cornett, free agent. The Celtics will try to bring both of them back. What the rumblings are, the Celtics are going to try to bring Horford and Cornett back. But even then, you probably need another big with Porzingis now down in Atlanta and not replacing him with the big. So I'm a Pirtle guy within the context of potentially trading for him. But I know the Raptors. We know the Raptors are pretty high on him as well. So they're going to try to hold on to him. But in a deal for Derek White, I just don't see how the Celtics would necessarily get better by attaining a player from or players from the Toronto Raptors for Derek White. It would have to be the player aspect. We get a good asset in. Wait a minute. No, no, nope. Griffin. No, 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 no. Nope, no, nope, nope. Wait a minute. Wait, we had the salary sheet go away. Okay, so I don't think the Celtics would necessarily get any better if I don't think the Celtics would necessarily get any better by acquiring a player, but it would be all the picks, right? It would be a Desmond Bain type of deal. Um, in my opinion, say with Memphis, where Memphis gets Contavious Caldwell Pope, and just checking the notifications here. But Memphis gets Contavious Caldwell Pope and Cole Anthony. They also they also receive essentially five first round picks in that deal. That would be somewhat of the same market in which the Celtics would be trying to get from the Raptors in a potential deal for say Quickly or RJ Barrett or even Pirtle. You could mix Pirtle in with say Abaji and get to that number, or even Grady Dick. So I would say the Celtics would be more about the attainment of future assets and asset accumulation with a Raptors deal than simply getting better. And that's what people are going to have to understand about a lot of deals in which the Celtics could potentially partake in tonight and into the future in the offseason. The Celtics might be in asset accumulation mode. That's important because back in
Yes.
2021, what led the Celtics to relevancy in 2022, 2023, and 2024 was the asset accumulation within the summer of 2021. Because if anybody remembers, the 2020-21 season was a complete disaster. The Celtics were 36 and 36. They were 7th in the East. They played in one of the first playing games ever against the Washington Wizards, and they were not swept out of the first round, but gentlemen swept out of the first round by the Brooklyn Nets, and that team was just all over the place. And you looked at the team in 2021 compared to 2019, and the reason the Celtics fell so hard in 2021 is because of how many assets walked out the door for nothing. I mean, you look at the 2019 team. Kyrie walked for nothing. Terry Rozier walked for nothing. Marcus Morris walked for nothing. And you go down the list too. Gordon Hayward in 2020 walked for nothing, right? So, and even Aaron Baines, we traded Aaron Baines. The Celtics traded Aaron Baines. He was involved in the whole Phoenix. It was Ty Jerome was involved. A couple, Carson Edwards. I don't remember exactly the whole trade, but the Celtics did flip flop some picks there. But Aaron Baines, he was a tangible asset. They turned into future assets. So even him, I don't want to say they got nothing out of him, but they got future assets in which didn't convey immediately for the Celtics. So the Celtics lost so many assets in that 2019 summer or even 2020 summer. Like you look at both of those summers, the Celtics just, and 2020 summer was actually in November because of COVID. But those summers, the Celtics lost a bunch of assets, and what they needed to do in 2021 was go out and attain assets in which they could potentially boost the stock of out on court in a season that was supposed to be a not a retool, not a rebuild, but we're working our way, right? You could call it a retool in a sense there in 2021, definitely. But in 21-22, the Celtics, they acquire Josh Richardson. They acquire Dennis Schroeder in the offseason. They get him at a cheap price. They go out and get Ennis Freedom, right? Ennis Cantor in the offseason that year. So in 2021, it was about asset accumulation. They get Al Horford as well. Kemba Walker was a diminished asset at that point in time going into the 21 offseason. And what did the Celtics do? They flipped him into Al Horford, who's still a relevant name today. And that was about asset accumulation because if you look at it later on in time, what happened to those assets? Well, they turned into guys like Derek White. They turned into guys like later on down the line, Malcolm Brogdon, who turned into, of course, Drew Holiday, and then Kristaps Porzingis. I mean, we could go down the whole tree of how every asset goes one place or another, but the 2021 summer was about asset accumulation for the Celtics. This summer could be of the same degree. And the key point in all of that is asset accumulation is different than building a competitive championship roster. Okay, if you're building a competitive championship roster in which is supposed to win the title or compete for the title is what the Celtics did in 2023. right? And even 2022 as well, bringing in Brogdon in 2022, but then in 2023, bringing in Giroux and Kristaps Porzingis. Those were moves, right? Brogdon the year before, Gallinari the year before, and then the year afterwards, Giroux and Kristaps. Those are moves in which the Celtics are making to build a championship roster. Now the Celtics, they're not in that state, right? Next year is going to be, in my mind, a gap year, right? We called it the bridge year a million times because Jason Tatum's not coming back into the lineup. That's a $54 million player not playing for you, your best player not playing for you. That's going to be a hard thing for the Celtics to get over, even with a pretty okay roster next year. Like the Celtics could be a top 4 seed in the East. They could be a top 2 seed in the East, given how it seems as if the East is weak right now. We'll have to see what kind of moves are made tonight or even further on down the line. But the East is pretty weak right now. The Celtics could still attain a good record. I just don't see the Celtics winning the championship next year. And it's likely going to be a gap year. And with that in mind, the Celtics, this summer, they're not positioning themselves to win the title next year. They're positioning themselves to win the title in 2027, 2028, 2029. And that comes with the asset accumulation of this summer. And they're not going to be moves that solidify the roster to compete now. They're going to be moves for further flexibility in the future, whether it's a player asset like Anthony Simons, the Celtics just received for Drew Holiday, or even Georges Niang. I mean, both of those guys, they have their assets for the Celtics, number one, but number two, they're two players in which the Celtics received, and it got them under the second apron. The Celtics cut what? It was 20. I don't remember the exact number in which the Celtics cut. I believe they're at $200 million right now for their. So they basically cut what, 27 million, 28, almost $30 million from their salary number with those two trades. Puts them under the second apron. We went over the second apron a lot yesterday on what kind of implications. Now the biggest implication to me is the Celtics can now aggregate salaries in trades and now can take back 25% more than the outgoing salary, which is huge because that gives the Celtics more room to just go out there and make moves they otherwise wouldn't be capable of making. So those trades gave the Celtics flexibility to not only make moves, but also sent assets to the Celtics in which the Celtics could move for players later on down the line, whether it's at the trade deadline this next season or during the draft tonight or even in July. We don't know quite yet. But Griffin, what are your thoughts on all of this? And we talked first about the Raptors. If you want to go in on that.
Well, you said a name, and I have a cool thing to show really quick, and then I'll get into it. But you said Colin Castleton.
Oh yeah,
Game used shoe by Colin Castleton.
there you go. There you
No,
go, folks. He is making. Let's see, Colin Castleton. He
no,
made $314,000 last year with the Raptors. $314,000. This year, however, will be making $2.2 million. So
hey, so that shoe
there you
might
go.
be
A little
worth
golf
something.
clap for that one.
That shoe might be worth something now.
The 314 though, $314,000 last year.
Yeah, no, but ultimately with that trade, I don't see that happening. I agree with your take though on that. Shipping Derek White off to the Raptors, I don't see a world where, and we talked about this before, where you could get an even trade for Derek White unless you get more than what his value is, because Derek White is such a player where he plays such a pivotal role on the Boston Celtics, and he's such a player that the Celtics need in their lineup. I don't see a trade matching up well, because I wouldn't give him up for like a one-on-one player unless the player is like an all-star level player. And I wouldn't give him up for future picks because I feel like we could still win with Derek White. You know, there's nothing to me that shows that we can't win without Derek White. But that's pretty much all I have on that one. I don't really see us moving him or whatever. But yeah, that's definitely my take on that.
Yeah, and let's also talk about too the Jaylen Brown rumors to Utah, because Jaylen
I'll,
Brown.
I'll hit on that, and then I'll probably head out of here.
No, that's completely okay, Griffin. Because we're gonna go on and we're gonna preview this whole thing, and we're also We'll also be live later, folks. We'll be live later for the entirety of the draft. So you get the preview now, you get the preview live, right? It's like the pregame show to the draft, and then later is the real draft broadcast here. However, let's get into the Jaylen Brown rumors real quick because certainly important to get into. And just these are the two rumors in which we're primarily focusing on right now. Number one, this one, the Utah Jazz have made an aggressive push to try and acquire Jaylen Brown from the Celtics per Brett Siegel. So let's focus in on that one now. Jaylen Brown and the Utah Jazz. Now that one's interesting because the Utah Jazz, we mentioned at the start of this, Austin Ainge and Danny Ainge in the front office out in Utah drafted Jaylen Brown all the way back in 2016. And not only did they draft Jaylen Brown, they held on to Jaylen Brown throughout the years, did not trade Jaylen Brown when I'm certain they had plenty of time to do so and plenty of moments in which they could have done so over the years at different moments. A lot of teams wanted Jaylen
But
Brown at various different times. However, the Ainge family, Danny Ainge, Austin Ainge, always held on to Jaylen Brown. However, that report coming out, the rumor coming out, the Utah Jazz aggressively trying to pursue Jaylen Brown. You'd have to think the number 5 pick would be involved in a deal like that. I will say the Utah Jazz, they're coming off their third year of tanking. They have nothing to show for it. They have Lauri Markkanen, they have John Collins, they have a mess of a roster. We went over it. We went over it on a live this last week. The Jazz, they have $38 million worth of salary wrapped up in 10 players at the back end of their roster. $38 million for 10 players? I mean, tells you what type of back end of the roster. It's a mess. It's an absolute mess of $2 million, $3 million contracts the Jazz have at the back of the roster. However, Griffin, from your perspective, what do you think of a potential deal between the Jazz and the Celtics for Jaylen Brown?
I don't like that move. I feel like there's other teams that you could get better assets for Jaylen Brown. Obviously, you said you have to entertain that thought and like getting future first round picks to maybe potentially if like you thought about it, the Celtics tank and get AJ DeBansett next year, try to go for him, but not even tank. Like you see the Mavericks didn't really necessarily tank and they got the number 1 overall pick. So, I mean, you look at the assets. I feel like that's the only one that really sticks out to me that you get AJ DeBansett if you did that trade because, with the future first round picks. However, I don't see the Celtics making a move with the Jazz or I don't see them shopping Jaylen Brown. Like, obviously, you have to be open to things and you have to listen to offers because there could be one that could blow you out of the water. I mean, geez, if we heard that Jaylen Brown, we could trade Jaylen Brown for Luka Doncic, you're making that move, Like, I'm just saying, like with the whole Luka trade with Anthony Davis, obviously, like if there's a trade that blows you out of the water, you're taking it, and that's what people are gonna have. So ultimately, I don't think that Utah fit it would work, and I don't think they would make a move. However, that you already said Danny Ainge is very high on Jaylen Brown. He's loved Jaylen Brown his whole time in Boston, and Danny Ainge is very good at getting players he likes, like John Collins. He was very high on John Collins, got him into Utah. But I will have to say, Danny Ainge, I don't think Jaylen Brown makes it into here. I will say, wait, Seamus, we have a special guest on here. It looks like
We do? We do? Yes, we do. We do.
wait,
It's
this is
our
a
guy. It's our guy. Wait, let's transition him in here. It's our
hold on.
guy,
I was gonna dip out, but this is my first.
Justin Lowe. Welcome in,
What's
Justin.
up, boys?
We're talking
What's
about
up?
Jaylen Brown right now.
Nice to meet you.
Oh my goodness.
Oh,
Have you
yeah,
guys
that's
never
right.
been on the same broadcast before?
No, because actually, when I left for a while, I don't even think Griffin. I don't even think that we were in communication yet. I don't even
No,
think.
we have some beef to squash though right here on this live.
Wow.
All
Wow.
right. I haven't even met you.
I'm not even going to
I
say
know.
anything
Can
right
we
now.
squash the beef? Can
I'm
we
like
squash
Andy
the beef?
Cohen. Let y'all
Yeah,
go.
we can.
All right, listen. I have a bone to pick with you.
All right.
Every once in a while, you'll unfollow me on Instagram. But I found out that you weren't very high on Baylor Shireman, okay? I found this out.
That was misconstrued.
no, but I interviewed Baylor Shireman and I tagged you in there before I even met you. Okay.
Hmm.
And I wonder if that's one of the reasons. But every once in a while, I'm like, damn, this guy keeps unfollowing
No.
me and following me. All right, but we had that Blake Griffin connection, so we gotta love that. But
Blake Griffin's a legend. No, I don't.
can we squash the beef?
Yeah, sure. It's squashed. I go through these phases where I follow like a crap ton of people, and
Okay.
then randomly, if I don't see content in my feed, I just unfollow people. But it's nothing personal.
I had
But
well,
no,
nice to meet you
you
again.
want to know what though? I'll clear the air about Baylor Shireman because um, it's not so much I wasn't a big fan of him. Um, First of all, I didn't think he played particularly well in summer league. He didn't give me the best impression. But my big thing was I wanted Baylor Shireman to play in Maine a lot. I didn't think he was NBA ready, and I think we saw that early on. And he didn't look the best in summer league. He didn't look the best in preseason. Then he comes out in Maine, and I mean he was averaging well over 20 points, upwards of 25 points a night up in Maine, and he really found his rhythm. And when guys went down towards later in the season, February, March, April, Baylor Shireman was able to step up. And it's funny you mentioned Baylor Shireman because I have a post going up pretty soon saying, I put out a tweet the other day saying, am I crazy or should Baylor Shireman be taking Sam Hauser's role next year, whether Hauser shipped out or not? I think
Should.
that's a legitimate question. I think that's something that the Celtics seriously have to look at. That's no shade towards Sam Hauser, but when we look at Baylor Shireman, I see a lot of things out of him, and I see a lot of improvement already. Obviously, the size of him is tremendous, and the Celtics could use some size right now, specifically on this team. I know this team's going to look a lot different come October, but as of right now, we could use his size. He also has playmaking. We've seen his Rondo-esque like playmaking out there on the court for the Celtics last season. I think he's well capable of consistently doing that. He is a quarterback, so that kind of ball knowledge might help him, but his shooting is terrific. And then my big thing defensively, he's not a cone on the defensive end. He's able to move his feet, stay in front of his defender, plays really well off the switch. So I have turned into a big Baylor Shireman fan. Never really hated him, but I was definitely on the keep Baylor Shireman down in Maine, let him develop there. Because let's face it, when you have forwards ahead of you in the rotation, such as Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, you're not going to get much time, right? Excuse me. And that's something that we saw with Aaron Nesmith. I was a big Aaron Nesmith guy, but guess what? In the trajectory of the Celtics roster and how things were going in our forward depth, Aaron Nesmith just wasn't going to get the opportunity. He just wasn't going to get the chance. That's why Brad did a great job shipping him to Indiana, where he was going to get a chance. And obviously, he was a big piece as to why they went to the NBA Finals this year. So no shade on Baylor Shireman. I definitely wasn't the biggest fan of him, but it was nothing personal. It was just I didn't think he was NBA ready, which is very fair to say. And I'm hoping next year he leaps into that role and he's in the rotation more consistently.
Yeah, well, I have to say I'm a big Baylor Shireman guy because if you haven't known, I'm from Maine, so I go to a lot of those games, and I have to say I have that same Celtics color thing back there, the like little light. I have that right up there. But
my girlfriend's mom got me, and I said I got to hang it up, but it looks pretty nice. It looks pretty good.
I never use mine because I always have my light on for videos, but
yeah.
But I will see you boys for the draft when we are breaking that down live. Yeah. So I will catch you guys in a little bit.
100%. And wait, let's look at the draft order real quick, Griffin, before you leave here. If we can pull it up on screen here in a second, Griffin. Thank you for joining today. Griffin, we'll see you later tonight for a big draft night here with the we thought maybe potentially this could be a boring draft night for the Celtics at picking 28, 32 and ho-hum, but it doesn't look like that's going to be the case for the Celtics. However, Justin, welcome back here on CTW Live. I'm excited to have this conversation because the first conversation we get to have between each other is about the Utah Jazz and the viability of the Jazz trading for Jaylen Brown. I 2025 has been a whirlwind. It feels like there are just crazy things happening. Luka Doncic is a Los Angeles Laker. Right now, we're talking about Danny Ainge and Austin Ainge trading for Jaylen Brown from the Utah Jazz. It makes no sense to my brain. Like if you go back in 2017, if you told us in 2017 this is what's happening in 2025, we'd be going, what happened? What happened to this whole era? However, it seems as if the Jazz are aggressively pursuing Jaylen Brown at this moment in time. What are your thoughts on that right now?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of teams. I think all 29 teams are actively pursuing Jaylen Brown right now over the phone. I don't blame Brad Stevens for picking up the phone and just seeing what's out there. It doesn't mean you have to pull the trigger and make the deal, but there's no harm in ever seeing what's available for anybody on the roster. But talks. It seems like specifically these last 2-3 years with Jaylen Brown, the talks have spiced up. I'm not on the break up the Jays. I've never been. I don't think I ever will be. But what I will say, Seamus, is if there's kind of you look at next year where Jason Tatum's not going to be in the lineup for all of next year, if not definitely most of next year, it's going to be Jaylen Brown's chance to be the number one option. And this is going to be his real chance to be the number one option for the Celtics consistently throughout next year. And if you don't see too much out of Jaylen Brown next year, then I believe it's the appropriate offseason to talk about dealing Jaylen Brown and seeing what moves can be made there. Again, not in favor of that, but I do think that Jaylen Brown should be given this year to kind of see what he can do as the main character, as the number one option, and then we go from there. But in terms of specifically the Utah Jazz franchise, obviously Danny Ainge going there a couple years ago, now Austin Ainge going there this summer, and now Jaylen Brown. They're actively pursuing Jaylen Brown, so I don't blame them.
Don't forget about Steve Mikhailou and Jaden Springer. Don't forget about those guys.
Right, right. If anybody knows anything, it's about Jaylen Brown. It's going to be the guy that drafted Jaylen Brown, and that's Danny Ainge. Right. So I don't blame him. Utah is a team that's kind of shown promising aspects within its organization these past couple of years. But I think they're ready to make a move. I think they're ready to go for it. Similar to, they've seen bounces from Houston. They saw bounces from Oklahoma City. They're going to see bounces from other teams in the Western Conference. And, does Drew Holiday stay in Portland? And does Portland make a jump and try to make their run? So I think Utah's just trying to stay there, try to keep up with other teams towards the bottom of the bracket that could be much better this season than last season. You can even throw in the New Orleans Pelicans recently acquiring Jordan Poole. And if Zion can get healthy, I know that's a big if, but we do know how Zion can
Poole
be.
And Zion. Oof.
Well, I do. I think that, the West is not obviously as open as the Eastern Conference next year, but I do believe that we're going to see some surprises out West. And it could be teams like Utah if they can acquire a guy like Jaylen Brown or Jaylen Brown himself. But in terms of the Celtics, I think Brad is actively taking these calls. I think he should. That's his job. That's what he gets paid to do. And you never know what's out there until you try. So take the calls. I really don't think Brad will bite. I'd be very shocked if Jaylen Brown is dealt specifically this offseason. But yeah, I'm not buying too much into it. The whole Jaylen Brown rumors, I'll believe it when I see it. I'll believe it when it happens. And it hasn't happened in years. We were very close. It seemed as if 2 years ago when it came to Kevin Durant. I don't think if you didn't trade for Kevin Durant 2 years ago, Jaylen Brown for Kevin Durant 2 years ago, even 3 years ago, I don't think you would trade Jaylen Brown for Larry Marketing, Jordan Clarkson, and John Collins. It just wouldn't make sense to me. I get it. Throw in that fifth pick. But I don't think that's doing much for you and doing much for the Celtics. So I think Brad will politely hang up the phone on Danny Ainge.
Well, the issue with the Utah Jazz is the fact they don't have too many assets to give out to the Celtics, which if really looking at every situation in the NBA, we look at every single situation, the Utah Jazz might be one of the more depleted situations out of any franchise out there. Because looking at their entire roster. First of all, let's go through their picks because I went through the Raptors picks, so we might as well go through the Jazz picks. Now the Raptors pretty easy because they have all their own picks. They don't have any traded picks. They have all their own picks. As for the Jazz, in this year's draft, they have number 5, They had number 21, number 43, and number 53. So 2 first-round picks in there. 21, if you were trading for Jaylen Brown, you'd have to think 5 and 21 would likely be involved. Next year, they have a first-round pick from either Minnesota or Cleveland. That one probably projects to be in the 20s. If I'm just looking at that, they have their own first-round pick in 2027. What's odd is Utah seemingly does not have their first round pick next year. So Utah doesn't have their first round pick in 2026, but they do in 2027. The interesting thing about that is I'm assuming they would not be allowed to trade their pick in 2027 since it would be back to back traded first round picks. Since their 2026 pick is out the door already. So the Jazz wouldn't even be able to trade their 2027 first to the Celtics for Jaylen Brown, which you'd think the Celtics want a lot of future picks in this deal, and they would probably want a couple of first in 2027, 2028, and beyond. But they have the Lakers pick in 2027. That the Lakers pick, the 2027 Lakers pick, been thrown around all over the place. All of a sudden, because the Lakers, that was one of their only assets in which they could move. But that pick looks like it's going to be like before the Luka trade. It looked like, whoa, those Lakers picks and 2027, 2028, 2029. It's like those could look pretty good. LeBron's going to be likely done by that point, and you don't have another superstar there unless you counted Anthony Davis to carry that torch, right? And nobody was really confident in Anthony Davis carrying that torch. However, now with Luka in the equation, I would think the Lakers pick is probably going to be more so in that 15 to 30 range than the 1 to 15 range. But outside of those picks, you have a 2028 first round pick from Cleveland. The Jazz have their own first round pick in 2029, 2030, and 2031. This is a pick that I would 100% try to get from the Jazz if you were to trade Jaylen Brown to the Jazz. 2031, the Utah Jazz, they have Phoenix's first round pick right here. Unprotected. No protections. No protections at all on a 2031 Phoenix first round pick. And what's weird about that is Phoenix actually traded that pick for 3 first round picks earlier this season, January, that were all protected from different teams. So Phoenix was trying to build their asset pile from basically 2027, 2028, and 2029. But by doing that, they gave away their 2031 first round pick, which could just be disastrous looking out ahead into the future. So those are the picks on the table for the Utah Jazz. Just within those picks, there's not a lot of exciting picks going on. I mean, you have the Lakers pick in 2027. Yes, you have the 2031 pick from the Phoenix Suns. Those are pretty exciting. But outside of that, you could say Utah's own picks, but they can't even trade their own pick in 2027. So not too many great picks in there, but a couple you could consider, especially that Phoenix pick at the end. But looking at the players, I would assume the Jazz would try to send Lauri Markkanen to the Celtics for Jaylen Brown. But when I look at the contract flipping right there, right, the swaps, would it be maybe Jaylen Brown and Sam Hauser and Lauri Markkanen plus somebody else? Because if you're trading $46.4 million in Lauri Markkanen to the Celtics, and Jaylen Brown makes what, around $54 million, that's an $8 million gap in. You're basically what? You can't trade John Collins. You can't trade Colin Sexton. You can't trade Jordan Clarkson to the Celtics. KJ Martin, he's unguaranteed at $8 million. And everybody else on the roster, it's Taylor Hendricks, Cody Williams, Walker Kessler, Keontae George, Svi Mikhailuk, Kyle Filipowski, Johnny Juzang, Bryce Sensabaugh, and Isaiah Collier, along with Jaden Springer at the end. All of those contracts, yes, you could say, maybe Lauri Markkanen. Could you package Kessler and Keontae George? That would get you to the Jaylen Brown number. That would be interesting. Lauri Markkanen, Walker Kessler, Keontae George, and multiple first-round picks. That's when you start, you start getting the gears going a little bit there. John Collins, Colin Sexton, Jordan Clarkson. I'm just not interested in those guys if I'm the Celtics. I just want no part of them. I don't know why. I mean, I would want maybe Colin Sexton and Jordan Clarkson from an asset standpoint, and maybe even John Collins. But long-term value, they're all due a payday next year. So you'd have to figure that out of what you were trying to do there in the future if you're the Celtics. If you're getting one of those assets back, right? John Collins, Colin Sexton, or Jordan Clarkson for Jaylen Brown, you're probably looking to keep them long term or reroute them somewhere else. And if they're only under a 1 year deal, you're trading away a future of Jaylen Brown for a 1 year deal guy. I mean, that
Right.
gets a little sticky in there. But the roadmap would probably be Markkanen. You'd have to say maybe Cody Williams, Walker Kessler, Keontae George. Those are the three guys, really. And Cody Williams, rough season last year, one of the just league's least productive players while on court. And he did get quite a bit of opportunity. He's still very young, still only 20 years old. Shouldn't give up on Cody Williams yet, but he's a diminished young asset, but still an asset the Jazz probably want to grow and keep around. But that's what I kind of look at with the Jazz. It would have to be Markkanen, Kessler, George, and first round picks. That's probably the deal. Collins, you could get Collins, Sexton, Kessler, and George in first round picks, maybe. But then you get into the world of two of those assets again are expiring versus Lauri Markkanen, who's owed $53 million in 28-29. And that's a whole nother conversation with the Celtics is, do you trade Jaylen Brown for Lauri Markkanen, who's making $53 million, which I I've gone back and forth on Markkanen, right? When he was at Arizona, I was like, ooh, stretch big. I love this prospect. Like this man, I'm all in on Lauri Markkanen. Gets to Chicago, good rookie season. Then he's under the Jim Boylan Bulls, which were just a complete disaster.
Mm.
And his career kind of teeters a little bit. Gets a contract with the Cavaliers that I thought was a little bit of an overpay at the time, but wound up working out for him. And Cleveland trades him in the Donovan Mitchell trade to Utah. And then eventually we see he becomes an all-star out in Utah for that 2023 all-star game out in Salt Lake City. But at $53.5 million in 28-29, I was back in on Markkanen the last two seasons, more so the season beforehand, because last season he was just out all year. And I think Utah, that was more of a tanking
Yeah.
move for them. But $53.5 million for Markkanen later, like 4 years from now, that is, if you're trading away Jaylen Brown, isn't part of the appeal getting off his $60+ million money in the future? And yet
Right.
you're just going to replace that with Lauri Markkanen? Lauri
Mm.
Markkanen? I mean,
That's
is the rabid Boston fan base really going to get behind Lauri Markkanen at $53 million down the line as they are Jaylen Brown right now? I don't see that.
no,
I don't see that.
no.
No.
And I just don't see Jaylen Brown being dealt at all. I really don't. I think it's all talk. I mean, Seamus, what team wouldn't want a caliber guy like Jaylen Brown or Derek White? I mean, of course, Boston's fielding trades for multiple teams. Of course, Boston's probably receiving hauls for multiple teams. But I think Brad Stevens has this set in mind. I think he has the players written down on paper that are going out the door this offseason. I think Porzingis and Holiday were the two obvious ones. Obviously, you hate to see it, but that's just the reality of it. That doesn't mean Brad wanted it to happen. These new CBA rules, really, you have no choice, thanks to the 2016-2017 Warriors when they had DeMarcus Cousins, Kevin Durant, Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, and Draymond Green on one team. So it's just going to happen. This offseason is going to happen. This is a major, I wouldn't call it rebuilding, although the Celtics seem to be getting younger. I'd call it a retooling. Next year is going to be a very observational year for the Celtics. We're going to be observing Jaylen Brown and Derek White. How can those guys be the number 1 and 2 guys instead of number 2 and 3? We're going to see Peyton Pritchard obviously step up in a larger role with Jrue Holiday out the door. And we still don't have a center right now. Yet you're relying on Neemias Queta and Xavier Tillman, who is undersized, and you really didn't see much last season. And we love Neemias Queta here at Celtics Talk Weekly, but let's face it, the reality is he's not a starting center, and he's shown his moments for sure that he could be the backup center of this team, but the consistency isn't there, right? So the Celtics have a lot of question marks right now, and I think with the draft tonight and tomorrow, I think we're going to see a lot of movement happen. A lot of circling is going to be going on tonight, and I have a feeling later on in our draft show that we are going to be talking and breaking some news tonight, not just NBA news, but Celtics news.
I absolutely cannot wait for all of. I think this is going to be like the trade deadline again, where it's just we're constantly getting rumors, updates, and actual moves happen, especially early in the draft. But a rumor that came out yesterday, in which we were talking about a lot this morning, is the Celtics moving up in the draft, right? The Celtics are aggressively pursuing to move up into the lottery. They're aggressively pursuing a lottery pick in this year's draft. I question, number one, how far can the Celtics actually move up in this draft? And number two, what are the Celtics actually willing to give up in this draft? And even number three, who are the Celtics moving up for in this draft, right? So from your perspective, Justin, how far could the Celtics potentially move up, and who could they be targeting in this draft class?
They seem as if they are very dead set on trying to get into the lottery. So obviously a top 14 pick, whoever's projected to go in the top 14, the Celtics clearly have their eyes on. I'll tell you right now, Seamus, my eyes, I just gotta pull it up here. Ryan Kalkbrenner from Creighton.
Oh, St. Louis guy. St. Louis guy.
Mean, from Creighton, he's 7'1". I have his I took some notes here before coming on. He's a guy who 7'1". He can protect the rim. He can stretch the floor and shoot the three ball. You just traded away Kristaps Porzingis. Al Horford more likely to retire, and even if he doesn't, if he comes back to Boston, do you really want to rely on a 39-year-old Al Horford to be your starting center, especially in a wide open Eastern Conference where even though you're retooling, you're gonna make the playoffs and you still have the chance to be a top 4, top 5 team in the Eastern Conference? I don't think so. Luke Cornett is up in the air, and like I said, I just don't know if I trust Neemias Queta as your starting center. So, Franco mentioned it earlier. I believe it was Franco or Brendan mentioned earlier how they don't want to rely on a center in the draft. I really think that's what it's going to come down to. I think if the Celtics can go out and they can get Kalkbrenner, I think he would be a perfect fit in Boston. I think I would be super excited to watch him next week in the summer league and in training camp and preseason, and see how he can develop. There's one guy on my board, whether that's at 30, 28 or 32. It's Ryan Kalkbrenner. So I'm excited for him. I hope he lands with Boston, but it's hard. It's really hard to kind of do mock drafts, in my opinion. One, I'm not the biggest college hoops guy. My main focus is the Celtics and NBA. But also, you hear so much swindling about draft night and our teams moving up or teams moving down. There's so many rumors and there's so many trades, and you're just going a million miles an hour. And Rob and I on the last podcast episode, yesterday's podcast episode, I brought up, remember 2 years ago, I believe it was a Jordan Walsh draft where Brad just kept trading back and then back and then back and then back. I mean, we had we traded like 5 picks. Nope. Okay, we're trading this one. Celtics are on the clock. Okay, nope, they're making a trade. They're trading back again and again and again. And it just kept going. So, that's draft night's really hard for me. But I really haven't had as much hype about a player than Ryan Kalkbrenner. I'm really excited. I hope the Celtics can land him in the draft. That'd be huge, especially since the center position is such a question mark right now.
And if anybody likes Luke Cornett, they'll like Ryan Kalkbrenner. The only difference between those two guys is their personality. They play very similarly. Now, what we have to take with a grain of salt, Luke Cornett, we know he has that shooting ability that he doesn't exercise. Kalkbrenner, maybe less so. He's not a shooting big, right? He's not a stretch big like Luke Cornett was coming into the league. But they play very similarly to where Luke Cornett is now and where Ryan Kalkbrenner is now with Creighton and now coming into the NBA. But the personality, I'm not worried about Kalkbrenner's personality. We're not talking about his personality like Ace Bailey or Noah Sengay. We're not getting into that.
He's talking to himself right into China. Oh.
The next thing you know, he's going to be playing down in New Orleans, and I don't know about that. But Kalkbrenner, Luke Cornett is just this funny guy. It's like every single appearance that he makes, it's like the man's a comedian. I don't know how I don't know how he does his material. Does he prepare it on the bench? In the locker room. Every single interview he has with Abby Chid, he's got some sort of wisdom, comedic value to himself that he's always emitting. Kalkbrenner, on the other hand, I swear in every single interview, he's going to give you the yes, no, it was good.
Yeah,
we executed. Like just that's that's literally Ryan Kalkbrenner. The personalities are completely different, but the play is very similar. However, looking at where the Celtics could move up in this draft, move up to rather in this draft, number 5 seems to be a Jaylen Brown potential there. But even I look at, okay, if Jaylen Brown isn't in the deal, right? Could you still, how far could you move up the board? Number 5 seems like a Jaylen Brown spot, but if Jaylen Brown wasn't in the deal, could you
Sam
move up that, like Sam Hauser? But
Sam
you'd also
Hauser's
maybe
Sam
no.
Hauser's not going to get you the top 5 pick. Like
But
if you're going if you're counter offering, like it's like, hey, we'll give you the 5th pick for Jaylen Brown. It's like, no, hold on. You can give us the 5th pick, and instead of Jaylen Brown, I'll give you Sam Hauser. They are never ever going to call us back ever again.
What about Derek White though? We haven't heard Derek White's name to the Jazz, but well,
I'm
my
sorry,
thing,
I'm not trading D White. I
well,
said it
my
earlier.
thing is, who says no in that deal? Does Utah look at Derek White and go, okay, if Ace Bailey falls to us, we just go, because Ace Bailey is such a polarizing figure in this draft. Because Ace Bailey, in my mind, should be going consensus number 3 or even number 2. Okay, that's how good Ace Bailey is. It's just the fact right now he's not working out for teams. It seems like there's legitimate red flags in him wanting to pick his destination when he hasn't earned anything in the league yet. That's not a good sign for a player coming into a team setting expected to be in time. If you're picked high in the draft, a top 10 pick, you're expected to come in, eventually develop into a star and into a leader. Does Ace Bailey really have those leadership skills? Does he actually have the maturity, the personality, and the sacrifice too to actually lead a team to winning days? That's why Ace Bailey is falling in this draft, and it's a valid concern. But you still have the physical tools there with Ace Bailey that are just undeniable, and that's a question of how far does he actually drop? Which teams actually want to go out there and take a flyer on him? I look at the Utah Jazz at number 5, and I go, after the 2 seasons in which, or even 3 seasons in which they just had, that second season was they overachieved a little bit until they finished the back half of the season 1-25 or whatever it was. I mean, just
They
a
started off
terrible
pretty
record.
well.
I mean, it's crazy the NBA allows some of these teams. I went on a whole tangent about it when we were facing the Hornets at the end of the season. I was like, I cannot believe that the NBA allows the Hornets to roll out Yusuf Nurkic and the lineups in which they did at the end of the season. I mean, that is just like, oh, we want to get rid of tanking, but it's like it's just fully on display every single year. But the Jazz, they're one of those tanking teams. I think the tanking teams, they were punished during the draft lottery. Punished. Because you have Charlotte at 4, Utah at 5, Washington at 6, New Orleans at 7, Brooklyn at 8, and Toronto at 9. All of those teams, right? Tanked their lives away this season. Just tank, 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 tank. And yet none of them got a top 3 pick. All of them 4 through 9. And especially the Jazz, they don't have much to show for after the last 3 seasons of tanking. I wonder if Ace Bailey at number 5 is a very, very intriguing, like, whoa, this guy could be number 2 on some people's boards, number 3 even. Maybe we go ahead and take him. But the original conversation here was about Jaylen Brown and where the Celtics could move up to. Washington at 6. Washington doesn't have anything either. Like I'm just saying, Washington, Utah, specifically those 2 teams, and even Brooklyn, they don't have anything to build with in my mind. They don't have foundational piece. They have, some extra guys, right? Where you're thinking, oh, he could be a good rotational piece with a winning team, but they don't have the certified 1A like the Celtics did with Brown and Tatum. With Brown and Tatum, we knew, oh, we're building around these 2 guys. This is what we're doing. The Wizards, they have a couple good young guys. The Jazz have a couple good young guys, but they're not foundational pieces in which both of those teams are looking at going, we're gearing everything we do as a franchise around those players. They're just not. And therefore, I look at the Jazz and the Wizards. I think they're definitely possibilities for Ace Bailey, but they could be possibilities if we're talking about Jaylen Brown again and wanting to get aggressive there. Just saying on that front. But this is kind of if you wanted to really move up into 5, 6, 7, 8, I'm telling you, 8, I don't think. If anything, Brooklyn is trying to move up. They're not trying to move back. I don't see Brooklyn moving out of that number 8 spot unless they're moving up the board. And mind you, Brooklyn has 5 first-round picks in this year's draft. They have number 8, they have number 19, 22, 26, and 27. So Brooklyn likely moving up in this draft. I don't see them as a candidate. How about New Orleans? New Orleans at number 7. I mean, sorry, again, like we're getting it. I feel like we're in a range right now. Like if you want to get because that's what I'm trying to compartmentalize with the Celtics here is what are the Celtics actually giving up if they're trying to move into the lottery? I mean, are they giving up future first? You're likely giving up Sam Hauser. Are you giving up Anthony Simons, who you just acquired? Georges Niang? Do you maybe even look at Pritchard?
Oh
I'm just
boy.
saying. I'm not looking at Pritchard, but you have to. To me, Pritchard cannot. He's almost like a player where you're like, you have to keep him under all circumstances because his contract, he's worth $20 million. He's making 7. It's like you're not getting that value anywhere else. It doesn't matter what kind of offers, anything, unless you're getting a valuable offer like, oh, Pritchard for, X player who's making. But again, the contract, if you're getting a player better than Pritchard, he's making way more money than Pritchard. That's the problem there. But if you're getting into the top 10, right? And folks, we just have a trade. The Pacers have acquired the number 38 pick from the Sixers. There you go. So little freak out there for a moment. I go, oh, acquire, and I'm okay, number 38. So nothing
Wait,
there.
which
Second round
team?
movement. Second round movement.
Yeah, but for what team? I thought it was San Antonio and Indiana.
So the Sixers have no, it should be San Antonio. San Antonio has the 38th pick. What I just read, it said the Sixers, so that information is wrong, but yeah, Spurs. Okay.
First
Yeah,
38 pick to Indiana. I believe it was for future second round picks and cash considerations.
Big trade breaking yet again here. Number 30. We literally were here breaking both trades. I'm like, I'm a little scared right now. It's like everything that pops up, I'm going, all right. I'm like, acquire. It's like, okay. But we're talking about the top 10 here. Like, what do the Celtics actually have to give up to get into the lottery? Because is Sam Hauser going to bring you there? Anthony Simons? What teams? I look at the couple of teams I really look at. Toronto, definitely. Phoenix. So New Orleans, Toronto, maybe Portland, to Chicago for sure, and definitely San Antonio. Definitely San Antonio, because San Antonio, they have number 2. They have a boatload of assets. They would be fine moving off that 14 pick. Atlanta at 13, maybe, but Atlanta, it feels like they're in a little bit of a, I don't really know where they're at. They're competitive, retooling. They probably want to keep that pick. I think they could get a good player at that place in the draft. Phoenix isn't moving out of number 10. They just got that pick back. They went through hell to get that pick back. They traded away Kevin Durant to get that pick back. So you're looking at basically what? 7, 9, 11, 12, 13, 14 if you're the Celtics. And I'm not convinced all those teams are going to be willing to move back necessarily. And you just traded with the I find it hard too. The Blazers and the Hawks at 11 and 13. Those are 2 teams you just traded with if you're the Celtics. So maybe there's more connections there, right? Or
Anthony Simons back. You can have him back.
we trade him to the Hawks because I wonder with those 2 teams, I just look at that and go, well, if we were to move up for either one of those picks, could it have already happened in the Drew and Kristaps trade? Or I basically look at it and say, well, if this were to happen, wouldn't it have happened during the Kristaps or Drew trades in some way, shape, or form? Or do they actually wait? Because I don't believe those trades are finalized yet. I haven't heard any official word.
No, I
from any of the teams.
I think there's a deadline where it's official. I think it's like after the draft, things come official. I have the deadline all written down, but I don't know where my
it'll be later on in time. Then most of these trades I say on draft nights on draft night, they'll be finalized in July. So get ready, folks, for a lot of players wearing the wrong hats. Okay, just prepare for that as we get to that point this year, because whoever's pick number 10, they'll be going to Phoenix, but they'll be wearing a Rockets hat. All right, they'll be wearing a Rockets hat, unfortunately.
Can I say something that I wasn't on the show the other night when the news broke, but did you think of me the other night when the Kristaps Porzingis trade happened? Did I pop into your mind? Because I recently watched the Celtics Talk Weekly show. I often go back and watch our shows and from the past few years, and you got on me about I was raging about Niang. Oh, okay. You used to get on me, and you used to bring up his name just to bust my chops. And 2 nights ago, I said, of course, it's Georges Niang. Of
No,
course.
you are the first person I thought of actually. When you said Kristaps Porzingis, I was like, did I think of Justin? And you said Niang. I'm like, yep, that was you were no. The minute I read Niang, because the trade came across, we were on here. I was on here with Griffin, and we were with Coach AJ from SMCC, and we were just doing a normal pod. We were talking about the draft. Everything was light. And we were talking about Ace Bailey and whoever, right? And then the trade comes up. As I'm reading the trade on the broadcast, I'm finding out who's in the trade, and I got to Terrence Mann's name, and I went, oh, okay, Terrence Mann. And then he's going to Brook. I read Terrence Mann and the number 22 pick. I'm like, are we moving up? And it's like, no, that's going to Brooklyn. I'm like, okay, then who are we getting? And I keep reading and I read Georges Niang, and it's like at that moment I just feel defeat, right? Like that's just like, whoa, okay, like that we basically just turn Marcus Smart into Niang, and then I'm eventually immediately convincing myself, well, Niang, the minivan, he's got that edge to him. The Celtics haven't had that edge to him. They've been a little I'm just saying last year, the Celtics were a little soft last year at times, right? They're a little soft. It's like Niang's not that guy. And I gotta say, the whole are the Celtics gonna reroute Anthony Simons, Niang? That's all on the table. But I will mention with those two guys, they're basically career 40% 3-point shooters. Both have played, well, Niang, I believe he's played, well, both have played at least 7 years in the league. I think Niang is a 9-year player, if I'm not mistaken. Simons is a 7-year player. I believe Niang, 9 years in the league, 39.9% from three. So both of those guys fit the mold of we want guys who can come in here and shoot. Now, the other end of the floor with Simons defensively, now that's a little bit of a concern. Now, I personally think when you're in a losing situation versus a winning situation, there's more of a call for you to step up defensively in a winning situation. I think, in that TD Garden environment, I think you're a little bit more inclined to turn it up on that end of the floor than you are in Portland. Now, don't get me wrong, Portland, they have a great crowd
Niang,
too.
dude, Niang.
But Niang, I just it's the my issue with Niang, I like his. It's one of those guys I hate to go against, but when he's on our team, I think he's going to be. I think people are going to get to love him because he's a hometown guy too. He's from Lawrence, Massachusetts.
I
He
know,
went to high
dude.
school in
I
Tilton,
saw a
New
podcast of
Hampshire.
him the other day, and I'm there. This morning, I saw him on a podcast, and I'm like, I might be too hard on this guy, but dude, I just years of Niang just pisses me off. And in Game 6 against Philadelphia, Tatum came alive in those last 2 minutes, but Tatum was getting outplayed by Niang almost the entire game, and nothing infuriates me more. I never forget posting about a picture of Niang, and I was just so outraged. I'm like, you're really letting Niang outplay you right now in an elimination game. I can't stand him. Can't stand him.
We have two photos of Niang in here. Number one. Here's
this is Game 7 now.
I don't remember which game this was, but
he grabbed Jaylen Brown's leg.
Yeah, there you go. It's clean. It's clean. It's right there. NBA ESPN. I mean, caught it right in front. And then this occasion last year in November. That was the other one.
Flat toes on the Mass Pike.
But my issue with Niang is seriously like I mean, look, folks. I get up every morning, go to the gym, work out. If you're in the NBA making millions of dollars, why can't you do that? I asked Niang that because I look at Niang and I go, you're making millions of dollars to play in the NBA.
You got a podcast.
And his physique. I'm sorry. He's fat. Niang is a fat player. All right. How are you a fat player in 2025? Like, I'm not trying to fat shame anybody. It's just performance. It's like, imagine how good he could be if he was in shape.
Dude, I'm not going down that route. But no,
I am, because it matters in basketball. I don't care about anybody else out in society. Like, go ahead, do your thing. I'm talking about if you're performing on the Celtics, you got to be in shape.
Right. Well, it's also
got to be in shape.
That's your life.
We're not doing some kind of heat culture thing here. It's just common knowledge. Heat culture is like we ramp up practices every day, and it's like everybody's miserable down there.
I understand what you're saying, but okay. Here's on a serious note. Like, here's the thing with these two new guys, Niang and Simons. Like, these two are they have a chance of not even being on this roster. The Celtics, especially tonight, have a chance to flip those guys into some serious assets, whether it's going after a big player in a trade or whether it's even moving up in the draft. And I think the two pieces that the Celtics acquired here are definitely movable pieces, especially if you're trying to get up in the draft. So everything's going to be interesting. I believe the draft is at 8 o'clock, so it's in about a half hour.
Yeah, we're gonna get wrapped up here so we can restart.
Yeah, I was gonna say I am gonna bounce for a little bit, and then I think tonight, we'll definitely be back, and we'll have a lot to talk about. But I know this, and I know the second that we hit end stream, about 10 trades are about to drop. Jaylen Brown, Derek White, and everything, everything's just going to happen. So we might just be right back.
Right. But I was saying we've been on a roll though lately of them happening while we're recording. So I'm thinking the time is now, folks. The time is now.
So Tuesday night, Monday night, Rob and I got on a call and we were on the phone for about an hour. And, we were planning out the podcast episode and, we figured, okay, we'll touch on the draft. We'll figure, okay, we'll touch this and we'll do this and we'll close it out with this. And okay, whatever, the meeting ended. And then 11:30 at night, I'm sleeping. I'm in bed. I'm in bed sleeping. My phone starts going nuts. And I wake up finally and I'm like, oh boy, what's this? And it's Drew Holiday. I immediately texted Rob. I said, well, scrap the hour meeting we just had and all the notes that we just took because we have to talk about Drew Holiday being traded. So we get through we record the podcast, the Drew Holiday podcast, and we talk about Simons and, we talk about how we could fit with the Celtics and all this and that. And I had mentioned many times, it's hard to tell really how he will fit, because this is not going to be the same. I said to Rob, I said, we might not even have the same roster by the time this podcast episode ends. So we get through the podcast, and later that night, about 6-7 hours later, what comes across the phone? Kristaps Porzingis involved in a 3-team trade with Atlanta, Brooklyn, and Boston. I said, you've got to be kidding me. You've got to be kidding me. And by then it was already in production. It was already too late, and it was up. But fingers crossed, because you seem to have the good luck and you'll be on the shows tonight all night long. So
the other night though was, seriously, I was in here with Griffin. We were talking about the NBA finals at the time of Drew Holiday. We were literally on the last segment. I was wrapping up. I was clarifying a couple things about the Thunder, going, oh, the Thunder, it's like, oh, look at their guards right here. It's like they're crazy. They have the number 15th pick, or the 15th overall pick, yada yada. Then that trade comes across, and we had already been filming for an hour and 50 minutes at that point. And then it was like, and now go ahead and do it again. It's like, go ahead and just do that again. Like, we were hopping up like, all right, that's going to do it for us tonight. It's like, oh, nope, you got to go do it again. Because the night, like, Griffin and I are sitting there, like, for part of the broadcast, we're sitting here doing lookalike stuff. We're going like, Griffin, you look like Tyler Hero. Like, look at this. Like, people are saying whatnot about that. But the content, what's ironic too, I got another story about the whole Drew Holiday trade. Ironically about that trade too, earlier on in that same podcast, I spent 45 minutes talking about how the NBA needs to shift around their schedule and how the headlines are all crammed together and the NBA shoots themselves in the foot because all these headlines are on top of each other and nobody knows what to talk about.
Hours before Game 7.
That right there is the Game 7 is the focus, right? And ultimately, and we have
I know I joined it in. I know
we have Griffin back here. But Griffin, remember the other night, I spent 43 minutes talking about how the NBA needs to shift around their schedule and how the headlines can't be layered on top of each other. Because Game 7, it's like Game 7 is the main focal point. Hasn't happened in 9 years. And you have Tyrese Halliburton tear his Achilles. But what's going to lead on Monday? Is it going to be that? Is it going to be the Kevin Durant trade? Nobody knows. And then there's a million deals made. The Celtics make deals, and the Jordan Poole trade goes down. You have the Bane trade. The Bane trade, at least we had some time to digest. I would have rather the Celtics make the move then and like, hey, give us a week to go ahead and make content, because otherwise every single piece of content we're filming is just becoming irrelevant right away. Like, I'm sure this entire live after we get off, like, there's going to be a move and there's going to be
time out. Do you want to hear some content? Justin's
Griffin.
Justin's canceled. Justin's canceled. All right, that's the content for today. Justin is canceled. Welcome back, Tyler Hero. And no, it's Baylor Shireman. Get right. Hold on, someone.
I have a bone to pick with you.
Canceled.
I have a bone to pick with you.
Why is he canceled?
What's the bone?
Yeah, why am I canceled? You know who should be canceled here? The guy who posted a welcome to Boston, George Niang. That is just terrible.
Okay, you know what? All right. I'm not happy about it. Someone said he looks like a fat penguin, and I completely agree. So do you know what? I work, No,
if we were to read the Twitter comments from
look at the
Niang,
comment. Look at the comments on that. Look
from this move. I'm sorry.
I know. Watch. I am not.
Don't delete it. Don't delete it.
I don't like the fat penguin. You're right. Listen, I'm not on board with the fat penguin. All right, it's deleting. No, I am totally against the fat penguin. You know what? When he comes to Boston, Coach AJ really softened the blow last night when he was like, "Oh, he has a pretty good nickname, the minivan," and I was like, "Yeah, whatever."
No, I don't even think he.
Because he's shaped like one.
He's shaped.
You turn a minivan on its side, it's like, hey, it's George Niang.
You know what? I'm giving him.
He forgot his nickname. He forgot his nickname, by the way. That was the funniest thing. He goes, "Oh, he's got like the best nickname ever," and then immediately after claiming he has the best nickname ever, he goes, "I don't really know what his nickname is, so I forget." It was the funniest thing. How can you make that claim and then just not know his nickname? Just forget. I think he
was really trying to save Seamus and I, because Seamus and I were on a dark path. Like, you could see my face. Seamus is like, breaking, and I'm like, oh, who we got now?
No, can I bring up Griffin's a screenshot?
The more that trade went on, the less smile Griffin had in his face.
Oh my gosh.
When he got to Niang in a second round pick, it was just diminished. You could hit end stream. It was over. It was over.
I was like this. I was like, yeah.
Okay, can I just... Oh man, it's not
ready for this draft. That's what I'm saying.
It's not cropped, but I want to pull this out. I want to pull this out. Wait, hold up. I gotta.
Who's ready for this draft? I tell you what.
Wait, Seamus, this is not cropped correctly at all. I don't know how I'm gonna present this.
Okay, it's okay.
Let's see. It's fine. Let's just whatever. So this is Griffin and I reacting to the Drew Holiday trade when it went down. There you go, folks. There you go. And so we can.
Oh, dude, Griffin, what is that?
Wait. You guys sit here for a second. Hold up.
I don't know if I'm allowed to say it, but that picture of Griffin looks like he gets caught in like one of those EDP videos. It's like,
that's
face.
crazy.
Wait, why does it say Griffin's on the stage right now? What? I'm trying to remove myself.
Well, there's Seamus.
All right, I'm alone. Wait, we're alone. I don't know what Seamus is doing.
Now
he's gone. We might have to end this. We were supposed to end. Oh, now the phone's ringing. This isn't going good.
Well, I'm gonna tell you what. Justin.
No. Can you guys hear me right now? Can you guys hear me? Can you guys hear me? I'm going to crop this photo right now so we can get this up. So we can get this. This photo is.
No, yeah. I opened up my phone, and you know what? I was coming upstairs, and I was like, all right, I'm going to go say what's up to the boys, get ready for the draft. And then all of a sudden, I get a video from Justin of him unfollowing me. So I have some bones to pick. Listen, but my next thing was this. Crap, what was it? Oh, that's what it was. Seamus, I was getting some food, and I commented this. But you said breaking news, and I literally jumped up in the air. I was like, oh, geez. Look, hold on. We'll pull up the comment. Wait.
There's the reaction from draft night. Not draft night. What am I talking about? Tonight's draft night. This was from the Drew Holiday trade. This is us talking about the Thunder, and this is the moment in which the Drew Holiday trade went down. This is literally the moment. Look at our faces right here. We're just in shock. That's what this is.
Well, do you want to see my face progressively getting worse and worse and worse during this trade? Hold on.
Yet again.
All right, let's watch this.
You got to watch the clip. The clip of Griffin's face just.
Great news yet again from Shams Charania.
Breaking. Boston, Atlanta, and Brooklyn are finalizing a 3-team trade that sends Kristaps Porzingis and a second-round pick to the Atlanta Hawks, Terrence Mann, and Atlanta's number 22 pick, and Georges Niang and a second-rounder to the Celtics. Breaking here, not live, but on you can see your face just deflate. No longer a Boston.
Look at him look away. Look at him look away at the end.
Yo, I love Porzingis. Look at his shirt, the cookies and cream. I am such a big Porzingis fan. That was one of the funniest videos. That might be one of the funniest clips out there. But I'm I'm so excited. I'm like, oh my gosh, Anthony Simons to the Celtics. What are we doing next? And then it's like,
yeah, that was classic.
That was a clip in itself on this live, by the way. That right there of you react, because it looked like your face was actually in the shot here.
You squared that up pretty good. You squared that up pretty good. I'm reacting to the trade. That was good. I mean, we were just about to end the stream here, and then
it's time to raise the flag, everyone. It's time to raise the flag.
We are ending the stream here, so we can hop on the draft stream in a little bit. However, I want to say this. The Celtics move up in the draft. There's no big guy. I'm just looking at Thomas Sorber, and I'm going, very defensive-oriented big, very skillful, good footwork, good instincts, high IQ, very mature player. Maybe that's who the Celtics are trying to target in the draft lottery. Thomas Sorber moved up.
I'm on the Ryan gang here. I'm going full.
I also love this player too. Colin Murray Boyles. I think he's going to be a fantastic NBA player. Fantastic. All defensive first team, Colin Murray Boyles in his career. I'm calling it right now. I'm calling it. But I'm going to leave it there because we're going to talk about these players. Go ahead.
Oh, no, he's not. No,
I don't know. But we're going to leave all that conversation. We're going to leave all that conversation for later on the NBA draft special, because that is going to do it for us here on CTW Live for the draft preview. A lot of news coming out today around the Boston Celtics, and I'm sure more will be coming out later on this evening. We will have you guys covered for the entirety of the NBA draft. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow the Celtics Talk Weekly YouTube channel. Bump the head. Oh yeah, got the rock music going here. As we always say here, thank you all for watching. I'm your host, Seamus Zarlingo. Alongside me today, Griffin Aldridge and Justin Lowe. And as we always say, go Celtics.